وكذلك أوحينا إليك روحا من أمرنا ما كنت تدري ما الكتاب ولا الإيمان ولكن جعلناه نورا نهدي به من نشاء من عبادنا وإنك لتهدي إلى صراط مستقيم صراط الله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض ألا إلى الله تصير الأمور.
Brothers and sisters, to increase your iman, read the miracle, recite the Quran. Recite it every day and do read it loud. The verses of Quran are all Muslims' pride. This miracle was revealed over a long time span, sent from Allah to an angel then to a man.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Praise be to Allah. We praise Him and we seek His help. Whomsoever Allah guides is the truly guided one, and whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can show him guidance. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is His last messenger. Dear viewers, welcome to a very special edition of this program, Correct Your Recitation. Today, inshallah, is the very first live episode of Correct Your Recitation, and we invite you all to join us to a journey to heaven, to learn how to recite properly the word of Allah, the Quran, and conclude the ahkam which we reveal in it, and help one another to implement them in our life. Before we go any further, I would like to welcome our guests here in the studio, Brother Farouk, all the way from Australia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And of course, our by now very famous guest, Brother Abdullah, all the way from France. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How was your exams?
Alhamdulillah.
Great, alhamdulillah. May Allah make you successful. And of course, Brother Muhammad Shindi from Egypt. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
We spent a few episodes talking about a very important part of tajweed, which is the articulation points. And we will find out right now the importance of what we've done, because it will be needed in every single episode. And every single time we recite the Quran, we'll have to recall what we studied before, the articulation points. But once again, brothers and sisters, since this is a live episode, and that will be the beginning of our continuous series of Correct Your Recitation live, God willing, I would like to announce the phone number where you can reach us at. Phone number is 0020-238-555-248 or 249. Once again, and I'm sure the number will appear on the screen, the number is area code 0020-238-555-248 and 249. In the beginning, we'll try to refresh our memory by asking a few questions of what we studied before. So let me ask you, Muhammad, first. Can you remind us with the definition, the literal meaning of the subject which we're studying right now, tajweed? What does it mean?
Yeah, of course. Tajweed, as we said, it means in Arabic at-tahsin.
Tahsin.
Yeah, which is in English the betterment.
The betterment.
Yeah.
Great. Abdullah, the applied meaning, and for some of the viewers who did not join us before, the applied meaning, each science, whether religious or others, has its own scientists and professionals who master this art. So the science of tajweed has its own scholars who define tajweed and give it its applied meaning. Can you remind us with it?
Yes, is to pronounce every letter from its articulation point.
Great.
And to give it its right and dues of characteristics.
Well, for many of us, they might not know what is the meaning of rights and dues of characteristics. Which of course when we define tajweed in Arabic we said, and to give each letter حقه ومستحقه. What is the meaning of the word haq, which is rights, and mustahaq, which is dues of characteristics?
Basically some letters never change, when we pronounce
Some
them.
traits are permanent
Yeah.
with each letter.
Yes.
Okay? Never change. Like, for instance, the articulation point of each letter. It is the same always, right?
Yes.
And there are some characteristics which suffer some changing due to mainly the order of the letter. Whether the letter that follows this letter or the letter that precedes it, it affects its way pronunciation. Similar to, we said, the tafkhim, the tarqiq. And we said also that among the characteristics which are subject of change is the ruling of
Ra.
the ra. Great. We talked about tafkhim and tarqiq. But here, basically, we're beginning today to tackle a very important thing, which mainly most of the tajweed teachers or the halqas of tajweed, they begin with it, which is the ruling of the noon and a tanween. What we did is, we began first with the articulation points because of its importance.
Yeah.
Then, now we're going to learn today about the rules of النون الساكنة, the noon which has a sukoon, and a tanween, because it has the same rules. And this subject is from the characteristics of the letters, the mustahaq. Because we'll find out that the rules which we'll study right now are not definite, are not always, we don't always hide the noon, or merge it in the following letter, or change it. Rather, it depends on the following letter. So the noon, the tanween, or the meme, or the lam, all the rules which we'll come to study, inshallah, basically will suffer these changes due to the order of the letter in the word. What follows this letter, or maybe what precedes it as well in some cases. So today, inshallah, we'll begin with the ahkam, the rules of an-nun as-sakina and at-tanween. And when we join two things together, there has to be a reason. There has to be something in common between an-nun as-sakina and at-tanween. First of all, what's an-nun as-sakina?
It's a sukoon over the noon.
So it's a noon that has a sukoon.
Sukoon.
What is sukoon?
Sukoon, it means,
It's a tough question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Each letter has vowels.
Yeah.
We talked about the fatha, the kasra, and the dhamma. And when the letter doesn't have any of these vowels, then it should have sukoon, where the letter would be like you put a stop sign. You pronounce it without any vowel. For instance, if you say to the letter ba, if you apply fatha on top of it, it will be ba. And if you apply kasra faruq, it will be b. And if you put instead of the fatha or the kasra dhamma, then it will be read as
Bu.
bu, right? What about if we put sukoon, similar to the mechanism of finding out the articulation point of the letter ba and every letter? How will you pronounce it then? You will say ab, a stop sign. So that's why I want you to take a look at this. You see this? That is a sukoon. Sometimes the letter would have this symbol as an indication this letter is sakin or has a sukoon. And sometimes it will be in some copies as a circle, empty circle. And sometimes actually the letter, when it doesn't have any vowel at all, it will be judged as that's sakin, a letter with sukoon, doesn't have any vowel whatsoever, right? Our subject today, which is an-nun as-sakina and at-tanween, in the case of an-nun as-sakina, an-nun itself might have this symbol, this sign, which we call it sukoon. What does it look like? Here, in black. It looks like the head of the letter ha, right? The head of the letter ha. So this is a sukoon which we'll need in the very first ruling of an-nun as-sakina or tanween. Well, we already spoke about an-nun as-sakina, but we didn't answer the very important question, Faruq, which is, what is the relationship? What's common between an-nun as-sakina and at-tanween? What's common? First, what's tanween? Perhaps if I do this, take a look at this. When I have two vowels on top of each other, that's called tanween. So basically, it's not a noon. But when we pronounce it, it gives the same sound of
noon.
Not any noon, because
Noon
we said
sakina.
there is na, nu, ni, and there is an.
Yeah.
So at-tanween, the two vowels on top
Gives
of each
the
other
same pronouns.
will give the same sound of
The nun sakina.
an-nun sakina. That's why they share something in common, the same traits. But a lot of differences between them, such as an-nun is written, it's a part of the word. But at-tanween, look at it. It is just a vowel, right? It is just a vowel in the case of the two kasras. And in the case of the dhamma, two dhammas, it's just a vowel. So if we happen to stop, we will not pronounce it. If we say, look at the second example, for instance. حاسد إذا حاسد إذا. Okay. Now, if I ask you, any of the viewers, have a pen and a paper, and try to write down whatever I say, without looking here. Write down حاسد. How will you spell it? By the end, you will spell there is
N.
a nun,
Yeah.
right? Because it sounds like a nun sakina. So that's why it shares the nun the same ahkam, because of the sound, because of the way of its pronunciation. Salamun, the last example. Salamun. If I want you to write it down without looking, you'll say sa, la,
Mun.
alif, mun.
Min
Then
nun.
you would assume there is a nun. Yes, there is a sound of the nun, but there is no physical nun there. So that's why when we say an-nun is sakina and at-tanween, we give them the same ruling because they share the same fact that they have the same sound.
Yeah.
And what really counts in learning tajweed is the sound, is the pronunciation, is the point of articulation. So now, we notice in the case of an-nun sakina that this nun, brothers and sisters, could happen in a word, and this word could be either noun or verb or a letter. In Arabic, we say to the preposition, we call it a letter. Okay? The preposition such as from or to or on. So here the word min literally means from. We call it in the Arabic grammar a letter, a preposition. So the nun, an-nun sakina, happen to be in just a letter. Or وَتَنْحِتُونَ. Tanhitun means what? Tanhitun means, and you guys carve. So that's a verb, right? And the word al-an'am. Al-an'am is
Name.
noun,
Yeah, no.
which means cattle, right? When we look to the next slide, we'll find another very interesting fact. The word وَيَنْأَوْنَا. وَيَنْأَوْنَا. Where is the nun? Right there. Is this nun sakina? Yes.
Yes.
That's why we put the sukoon, which looks like the head of the ha, in red. وَيَنْأَوْنَا. Where is the location of the nun? Is it in the middle of the word or by the end?
In the middle.
In the middle.
Look at it again. We've got two nuns.
Yeah.
But which nun are we talking about?
The second.
A nun is sakina.
First.
So we're not going to pay any attention to the nun which has any vowel, regardless, whether it's fatha, dhamma or kasra, zabar, zair or jazm or pesh, but only the nun with
Sukun.
sukoon. So now, وَيَنْأَوْنَا, we find out that the nun happened to be in the middle, regardless in the middle exactly, or second letter or third letter. I mean, it is not by the end. Then it also happened to be at the end of the word. What would this benefit us with? It would benefit us that the rules would apply in the case of the nun, whether it is in the word or
At the end.
at the end. It depends on the following letter. That would change the fate of the pronunciation of the letter nun. Sakina. Make sure it's not any nun. We'll only focus on a nun which happens to have a sukoon. Look at the word min alaq. Of course, we all know this is في سورة العلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. There is nun sakina followed by ayn. And the nun happened to be by the end. Okay. Now, we're going to compare all what we said in the case of a nun sakina, that it comes in a verb or a noun or a preposition, it doesn't matter. And it could come in the middle, it could come by the end of the word. That happens with the case of the noon. But with at-tanween, the case is totally different. At-tanween has to be only with nouns. So if you see any word that has a tanween, 2 fathas, 2 dhammas, 2 kasras, then right away you can say, that's a noun. Muhammad, you may say Muhammadun. This is what we say. Muhammadur Rasulullah, right? Muhammadur Rasulullah. So there is tanween. That's a noun. But you can never apply a tanween to the end of a verb or a letter. Only the nouns. That's fact number 1. The second fact, that at-tanween happens only at the end of the word, because at-tanween is an extra noon. So it's added to the original word, to the original structure of the word. It is not a part of the word. And that's why when we stop, for instance, look at the word naran hamiyah. I just said naran. Oh, there is noon, or the sound of the noon. And it's not it. There is another fact, that if I happen to stop after the word naran, and I do not continue, then I have to say nara. What happened? I changed one of the 2 fathas into an alif sakina. So I say nara. But in the case of the kasra or the dhamma, I will say hasid salam. I apply sukoon instead. So when I stop, I change the tanween, regardless what was the original vowel, fatha, dhamma, kasra. All of a sudden I put it as sukoon in the case of the kasra and the dhamma, if it was. And in the case of the fatha, if there were 2 fathas, instead of putting sukoon, I will put alif, then a sukoon on top of it, so it will be nara. That doesn't happen in the noon, because the noon is an original letter in the structure of the word. So now I indicated the similarity between the tanween and an-noon is-sakina. Because of that, they both share the same ruling, which we'll come to study inshallah in the next segment.
Sheikh, that means that when we stop, we remove the tanween and we put a sukoon on the letter itself?
Exactly. That if the tanween was 2 kasras or 2 dhammas. But if there was a fatha, then one of the 2 fathas would be converted into an alif, like nara. But hasid, if you stop. If you connect it, then you must say hasidin idha. So there will be the sound of the noon. Salamun hiya. Okay? Now, before we go to a break, a quick reminder. Generally speaking, the rules of an-noon is-sakina and at-tanween are 4. It depends on the letter or the group of letters which would follow an-noon is-sakina or at-tanween. Whether in one word, such as in the case of the noon is-sakina, or in 2 separate words, such as in the case of the noon, or at-tanween, because at-tanween doesn't happen to come in one word. It's got to be by the end of the word. So it will be judged according to the letter which will follow it, which will be the beginning of the following word. Okay? You got it? Okay. So the rules are 4. The first is ilhar, which literally means to make clear, to pronounce clearly. That's ilhar. The second is idgham, which means merging. And the third is ikhfa, which means hiding or concealing. And the last, which is the fourth, is iqlab, changing. Well, it's time for a break. Then inshallah we'll resume after we take a short break. Stay tuned and we'll be back inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Recite it every day and do read it loud.
Sheikh Asim, can you tell us the significance of this event, the washing of Al-Kaaba in Islam?
A great privilege to any Muslim to take part in such a ritual. Honoring the sacred shrines of Islam was a custom before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Verses are from Surah An-Nisa, the Surah of women, and this is a very beautiful wisdom that we can take from there. Actually, a number of wisdoms.
لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس.
Anyone who chooses other than Islam as a religion, as a way, it won't be accepted from him. This Quran has to be understood by the way the companions of Rasulullah understood the Quran. We disconnect ourselves from the actions of certain Muslims who oppress people and kill people unjustly.
Recite it every day and do read it loud.
Welcome back. Well, we're talking about the four rules of An-Nun Sakina and At-Tanween. And we named them briefly. We said Ilhar, which is to make clear, to pronounce clearly, both An-Nun Sakina or At-Tanween, in addition to the letter that follows it. Then the second rule is Idgham, which means merging. And the third is Ikhfa, concealing or hiding. And the last is Iqlab, or changing. Today, inshallah, we'll study together the first rule, which is Idhar, to make clear, to pronounce clearly An-Nun Sakina whenever it is followed by certain letters. Similarly, and Tanween will be pronounced clearly, will give the same sound of An-Nun Sakina whenever it is followed by the same letters. There is a set of letters, 6 letters. We studied them before during our course of the articulation points. These letters are 6 letters: Al-Hams, Wal-Ha, Wal-Ayn, Wal-Ha, Wal-Ghayn, Wal-Kha. I put them in this order because this is easier to memorize them. Al-Hams, Wal-Ha, Wal-Ayn, Wal-Ha, Wal-Ghayn, Wal-Kha. And this, by the way, the same order, we arrange them according to how far or close to the throat or to the mouth cavity when we studied the articulation points. Okay. Very important notes, brothers and sisters. What is the definition of Idhar? Is to pronounce clearly. To pronounce what? An-Nun Sakina and At-Tanween. So if An-Nun Sakina is followed by any of the previous letters, Al-Hams, Al-Ha, Al-Ayn, Al-Ha, or Al-Ghayn, or Al-Kha, then we must pronounce each one of them, either An-Nun or the following letters, clearly, without stopping, without taking a breath in between, without taking a pause. So each letter would be pronounced very powerfully. And your tongue would hit exactly the articulation point. And the Idhar has different kinds. There is Idharun Halqi. You remember the word Halqi? Which is related to?
The throat.
The throat. If you remember, we said that there are certain letters which come from the throat. What are these letters? They are the same set of حروف الإظهار. الهمز والهاء والعين والحاء والغين والخاء. Right? Okay. Now take a look at this. Again, An-Nun, and would like to take a look at its articulation point. It comes basically from the tip of the tongue and what lies opposite to it from the gum of the two front top incisors, right? Okay, I would summarize it and I say, it comes from where? The tip of the tongue, right? And look back here. There is al-hamz wal-ha, al-ayn wal-ha, al-ghayn wal-kha. So basically, there is a huge distance, relatively of course, in the mouth, between these guys, these 6 letters, and an-nun. They never meet. They're far away from each other. This is at the very beginning, and they are at the very last. That's why, since they don't meet, they don't cause trouble to each other, so each one will be pronounced independently, clearly, without suffering. The noon would not suffer from them, nor will they suffer from the noon. That's why we say an, an. And these letters as follows: a, ah, ag, far away from the articulation point of the noon. So this is the reason why we apply idhar if a noon is sakina is followed by any of these guys, because they're far away from each other, one at the very end and one at the very front, so they don't meet, and that's why each letter has to be pronounced very clearly, whether a noon itself, a noon is sakina, or any of these guys. Now, we want to go back to take a few examples. That will help a lot. Here. Remember what we said about that a tanween is similar to the noon in the sound. And that's why it suffers the same changes. And the same rules which apply to the noon would definitely apply to a tanween as well. And noon is sakina if it is followed by any of the previous 6 letters, al-hamz, wal-ha, wal-ayn, wal-ha, wal-ghayn, wal-kha, these 6 letters. It will appear in the Quran with that sukoon, the top of the head of the ha. We saw it before. But sometimes in the case of the tanween, take a look at this. At tanween, the 2 fathas, the 2 dhammas, or the 2 kasras is written differently. Sometimes the 2 vowels are parallel to each other and exactly the same measures. And sometimes we find one of them is ahead of the other. Why? That doesn't happen coincidentally or accidentally. That happens for a reason. Let's not look at anything but this one. The 2 fathas, which are parallel to each other, exactly the same. And the 2 dhammas beneath it could be written this way: a dhamma covered by a shelter, or a dhamma with this ending. This is the way we will write the 2 vowels, and you will see them in the Quran in your hand, whenever the letter which has the tanween followed by hamz, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, or kha, indicating, hello, this is idhar. You must pronounce me clearly. Make no mistake about it. So when you see the vowel, the 2 vowels written in this format, right away you can tell, oh, well, this is idhar. And it's practice. But inshallah, in the next episode, we'll learn about what happens when the vowels come in this format. Okay? Of course, 1 fatha. When it is 2, that's tanween. And the dhamma by itself is a vowel, but whenever it's 2, that is tanween. We'll go to the next slide, where we start practicing. Practicing when the noon is followed by any of the previous 6 letters. Can you remind me with them once again, Abdullah?
Hamzun, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha.
Great. Never forget them. And the examples which we'll tackle, sometimes the noon in the same word followed by any of these letters. And sometimes the noon comes by the end of a word, and the beginning of the following word is any of the previous 6 letters. And in the case of the tanween, it has to be in 2 separate words. Right? Okay. Now, the hamz, the first letter of the idhar letters. The word man amana. Man amana. What happened? There is a noon sakina followed by Hamza or Alif, right? So we must say, Man amana. I would like for you to repeat after me. Man amana.
Man amana.
Do not stop, do not pause, do not take a breath in between. Do not make any changes on either one of them, neither the noon or the following letter, because the condition is idhar. You must pronounce it clearly. You will say, Man amana.
Man
amana.
Farouk, huh?
Man amana.
Great. Okay. In the next example, there is tanween, followed by
Hamza.
Hamza. Look at it. Jannatin alfafa.
Jannatin alfafa.
Okay. Muhammad Chindi, you are asking about what happens when I stop at a word that has tanween by the end.
Yeah.
We said in the case of the tanween is either a kasra or dhamma, we change it and we put instead sukun. But if the case is there was a fatha, then we will change one of the two fathas of the tanween to become an alif with sukun. And that's why we said here, al-fa-fa, al-fa-fa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How to pronounce the two words together? That there is the word jannat by its end. I don't care about the letter. I'm focusing on the tanween, which is two kasras. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
The two kasras. It will be jannatin alfafa, jannatin alfafa. The tip of your tongue must strike hard, powerfully, the articulation point of the noon. Then pronounce the alif clearly. You say jannatin alfafa, jannatin alfafa. I'm sorry I stopped. I'm not supposed to stop. I should say jannatin alfafa. Would you?
Jannatin alfafa.
Shindi?
Jannatin alfafa.
Farouk?
Jannatin alfafa.
Okay, now in the next examples, I'm not going to say anything. You guys are going to read and explain what happened and what changes take place due to what. Okay, Farouk, the first word is?
Yanhauna.
Great. I would like you to recite it clearly.
Yanhaun.
Yanhaun. Great.
Yanhaun.
Basically, there was a fatha on top of the noon, the last noon, which doesn't concern us because it's not sukun. But hey, when we stop at any word in the Quran, we have to stop with a stop sign, which is a sukun.
Yeah.
So it's not right to say yanhauna, right? Okay, what happened here? In the middle, there is a noon that has a sukun, followed by what?
Ha.
Ha. And the ha is one of the 6 letters which cause
Izhar.
al-har to the noon or a tanween, and that's why we'll say yanhauna. Okay. Next, Abdullah.
Man hajar.
Again.
Man hajar.
Wonderful. Man hajar. Man hajar. The noon sakina followed by ha. So the ruling is idhar. Shindi next.
وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ.
Wonderful. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. What happened?
Followed by ha, which is one of the 6 letters.
Exactly. So the ruling is?
Izhar.
So basically, we're not concerned about this meme. It's not our subject. What really grabs our attention, Farouk, is
Tanween.
the two kasras, the tanween. And look how they're written on top of each other, right? There is no space. They're not written in the format where one is preceding the other. No, the same style. Okay. Next. Farouk.
In alayk.
In alayk. In alayk.
In alayk.
What happened here? The word in ended with noon. Noon sakina. Followed by
Ayn.
ayn. Oh, ayn is one of the 6 letters of idhar. Then we must pronounce clearly
النون.
النون and the ayn as well. So we'll say in alayk. Oh, that's an easy ruling. It is easy. And this is the original rule. And from there, we'll learn the changes which will take place due to that the noon or the tanween will be followed by different series or sets of letters. But we have to begin with this to to understand the original condition.
This is the default.
Exactly. Hakimun.
Alim.
Did I make a mistake? Yes, I did. I said,
Stop.
you do not stop.
Yeah.
Because if you stop, then you better apply sukoon instead. So it should be Hakimun Alim. Hakimun Alim. Hakimun Alim. So I took your example. Next, Abdullah.
وَتَنْحِتُونَ.
Wonderful. The noon is followed by ha, and it is in the same word. Ruling is idhar. Next example also, Abdullah. Min hakim.
Min hakimin hamid.
Wonderful. Min hakimin hamid. You know what you did? You just took the example of Shindi as well. Because the word hakimin hamid, there is another idhar.
Yeah.
So in this example, there are two idhar. The first is the noon sakina followed by ha, and the second is tanween followed by ha. Okay, then let's skip this example, and we'll give you the next one, Shindi.
فَسَيُنْغِضُونَ.
Okay.
فَسَيُنْغِضُونَ.
What happens here?
Nun sakina followed by ghain, which is one of the 6 letters, and we should practice izhar.
Great. Then the next one is?
Min ghillin. Min ghil.
Exactly. When you stop, you change any vowel into sukoon. It will be min ghil. The next, inna Allah la'afuwun ghafoor. Oh, afuwun. That ends with, the word afu ended up with what?
Tanween.
Exactly. Tanween. I'm not paying attention to the letter. I'm focusing on the tanween, which shares the same sound with the noon. So it will be لعفو غفور. Okay. The kha. والمنخنقة من خير عليم خبير. And also, we studied the noon in the same word or in 2 separate words, followed by the idhar letters. And we studied also the examples of at-tanween, such as عليم خبير. Next will be some practice. But before we go to practice, inshallah, we'll take a short break, then we'll return very soon. So stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Recite it every day and do read it loud.
The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, all of them trustworthy. We don't look into their or their adala, if they are trustworthy or not. They are all trustworthy. Following their footsteps will bring others, will bring us together. It will be part of that robe which binds us as one ummah.
And if you look into the early tafsir, early exegesis of the Quran, you will find that all the mufassirin were trying to find out where are these 7 earths. Earthquakes, natural or artificial, can delineate the boundaries between 7 different zones within the earth. The conclusion that we have 7 different layers within the earth came to not only the 20th century. The true believer would prostrate down in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessings of that prostration will reach the 7th earth.
They are dumb. Though they can express themselves in a very beautiful way, in a very eloquent way, but when it comes to the truths, they become dumb. The forces of Rahman, وَعِبَادُ Rahman, those people who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what they are supposed to do, spend their money to support this deen. وَيُرْبِ الصَّدَقَاتِ, and he increases sadaqah. That amount which you give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is increased by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Recite it every day and do read it loud.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Well, I understand that there are several phone calls are waiting, but before that, inshallah, I would like to remind everybody with our phone numbers for those who would like to participate. Area code 00-202-38-555-248 or 249. Once again, the phone number, which I believe appear on your screen as well, is 002-38-555-248 or 249. Okay, now inshallah we're going to begin by practicing first in the studio the first 5 verses of Surah Al-Kahf, and you will join us. Then after that I will be happy to take your phone calls for those who would like to recite, and we're going to recite from the same surah for those who would be interested in calling in. Type, are you guys ready to follow me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, we will not pick on any ahkam or rules other than what we have already studied, either of the articulation points or the first rule of an-nun as-sakina or at-tanween, which is idhar, to pronounce clear or to make clear. Ready? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا.
الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا.
قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين.
قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه
ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا.
ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا.
ماكثين فيه أبدا.
ماكثين فيه أبدا.
وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا.
وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا.
ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم.
ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم.
كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم.
كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم.
إن يقولون إلا كذبا.
إن يقولون إلا كذبا.
Okay, great. While we're waiting for phone calls, did you guys find any ahkam that's related to what we studied today?
Yeah, Sheikh.
Okay.
There is أجرا حسنا.
Great. Verse number?
The verse number 2.
Okay, great.
الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا.
Great. I believe there is one sister who's been waiting, Sister Asia from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Go ahead, sister.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And by the way, you are the very first caller for this live program of Correct Your Recitation. We welcome you to the program.
Jazakallah khair for this program. May Allah reward you and all those who are behind for that.
Ameen, ameen. And you too. May Allah bless you all. And may Allah grant us sincerity.
Inshallah, me. But this is the very first surah. I am not that much perfect in my surahs. I just want to recite and I want to get a correction.
Inshallah.
So, yeah. So, shall I begin?
Please proceed on.
Yeah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Jazakum Allah khairan, sister. While you are still on the line, I would like for you to repeat after me the word أنعمت, making certain that you will pronounce the ayn clearly as I do. أنعمت. Try your utmost.
أنعمت.
Okay. Now, I would like, not just for yourself, but for all the viewers who are beginners, to record their own recitation as of today. And then a few episodes from now, once again, you examine your recording and you see the improvement which will take place, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. Sister, there is a difference between the a and the a. And that's why I want you to try once again to say a, أنعمت.
أنعمت.
Okay. You're going to listen to this episode once again and try and see where was the mistake. There are a few letters which basically the letters of الحروف الحلقية, the hams والهاء والعين والحاء والغين والخاء. We want you to work on the ayn and the ha. The ayn and the ha. This is what I recorded in this surah in your recitation. First of all, and thank you so much for trying. I would like to remind you, and those who are reluctant to try or reluctant to call, that the Prophet ﷺ said that one who recites the Quran fluently will be in the ranks of the honorable, the noble angels, and the one who tries while stuttering and find difficulty in it will receive double their word. So hopefully, inshallah, you're receiving double their word. Keep trying. Once again, أنعمت. أنعمت.
جزاك الله خير.
وجزاكم. Thank you so much, sister. Barakallah fikum. جزاكم الله خير. We have brother Yasser from Egypt on the phone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Muhammad Salah, may God bless you for this interesting program.
Barakallah fikum. May Allah bless you.
The rulings are okay, but I have a question about how to improve my memorization of the Quran.
Allah, inshallah, once we go on in this program, we'll have a whole episode talking about the issue of memorizing the Quran, whether a part of it or the whole Quran. And inshallah, we'll prescribe the recipe, the procedures of memorizing the Quran, whether you're young or old or parent. Inshallah Azza Jal, that will take some time. In addition to the surah which we started today, Surah Al-Kahf, I invite all the viewers to try to memorize. We studied today just 5 verses. That's not much, even if you're a beginner. Until next episode, inshallah, you have a whole week to memorize just the 5 verses, which I will recite once again by the end of this episode. So everybody try your utmost to work on memorizing as we go by. So okay, we have another sister on the line, Sister Ambreen from Oman. I would like for the viewers, if you're calling to recite, that would be great. Otherwise, for questions and answers, we may have another episode for that. Sister Ambreen, are you on the line?
Yes.
Go on, Sister. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, I recite, should I go ahead?
Please, and it will be wonderful if you recite the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf.
Surah
Al-Kahf, which we just recited.
Which we have just now recited. Okay, hold on 1 minute.
Of course, we're planning today to study the verses of reciting Surah Al-Kahf, then tackle its beginning. But unfortunately, time is zipping by very fast. We're almost ran out of time. So inshallah, after we listen to the sisters, we'll discuss together what we'll do in the next episode.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا
Okay.
قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا.
أجرا حسنا.
أجرا حسنا.
Wonderful.
ماكثين فيه أبدا.
Okay, why did you say ماكثين? The fatha or the zabar, you see the fatha on top of the noon, is a shorter vowel of the alif, so don't prolong it unnecessarily. So don't say ماكثين. No, it is ماكثين فيه أبدا. Okay?
Okay. ماكثين فيه أبدا.
Great.
وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا.
Okay. Now, sister, if you remember, if you've been watching the previous episodes, there is a difference between the ta and the ta. Okay, I'm going to say قالوا اتخذ. That's very deep. No, that's wrong. The right is to pronounce the ta different than the ta because it is at. So you say قالوا ta ta. قالوا اتخذ. قالوا اتخذ.
قالوا اتخذ.
Great.
Okay.
And for this ayah, I want you to read it from the beginning. وَيُنذِرَ.
وَيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ وَلَا لِآبَائِهِمْ كَبُرَتْ كَلِمَاتٌ تَخْرُجُ مِنْ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ إِنْ يَقُولُونَ إِلَّا كَاذِبًا.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you so much, Sister Ambreen. And for you, I would like to practice at home the ayn, particularly in the last verse, verse number 5. مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ. مِنْ عِلْم. مِنْ عِلْم. Of course, we have idhar here. The word noon is followed by ayn. And idhar is to pronounce clearly what? To pronounce what? The noon or a tanween and the following letter as well, which happen to be the ayn. So we must say min ayn, min ilm, min ilm. Okay? Min ilm. Unfortunately, we just ran out of time. Time is zipping by very, very fast. I enjoyed joining you for this episode. And hopefully, inshallah, next time we'll make certain, because we already explained the rules of al-idhar, so we'll try our utmost, inshallah, to spend some time with the tafsir, the explanation of the meaning of what we have started learning its recitation. And please, do not forget, from now on, every one of us will do their best to memorize Surah Al-Kahf. It is such a great surah. Inshallah, next time as well, we'll speak about its verses. So we've got 5 verses to memorize. By the end of this episode, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower us with His blessings, to grant us His forgiveness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. And until next episode, I leave you في رعاية الله وأمنه. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Brothers and sisters, to increase your iman, read the miracle, recite the Quran. Recite it every day and do read it loud. The verses of Quran are all Muslims' pride. This miracle was revealed over a long time span, sent from Allah to an angel, then to a man. That man was Muhammad, the best of creation. We were chosen to be part of his nation. He gave us a message, and that was Islam. So read this miracle, recite the Quran.